All right, well, welcome to this edition of ESPN FC Live. Whoo, now that we have all caught our breaths, Alexis Nunes, joined by Janusz Michallik. Our Stevie Nicol is probably thanking the Lord that he did not have to do this one. I would have loved to be a fly in the wall at his house for this one. Spurs up against Liverpool. In the end, it went Arne Slot's way, Janusz, but wow, what a blockbuster of a game. I mean, we had Spurs reduced to 9 men. We had red cards. We had a massive injury shortly after Alexander Isak scored what would have been a game-winning goal. And then Liverpool showing us probably how not to manage the last 10 minutes of a game if you want a chill afternoon. But like I said, in the end, it's 3 points to Liverpool, Thomas Frank, and Spurs with yet another loss. But they did manage to show some fight. Your thoughts overall, Janusz, on the game?
Well, two schools of thought. First one, as a former player, of course, is 3 points in the situation that Liverpool have been. It has been much better, right? You look at it, 6 games without a loss now, right? So that's positive. Your 2 center forwards score. That's also positive. But I think there's some, the second school of thought is that Liverpool are still very far away from Liverpool of last season, Liverpool that can challenge in any competition, Liverpool that's playing at their best, because at the end of the day, this should have been an easy win, right? It was for a while 2-0 with Spurs playing with 10 men. We'll get to 9 in the end, but I think they made everybody nervous, and I still think that there's a long way to go, because you look at the table and you say to yourself, Liverpool are 5th, level with Chelsea, who are in 4th place. All is well, and I think not just the last 10-15 minutes when they allowed Spurs to score, and then remember Richarlison had a pretty good chance. Yeah. To equalize. So not just that, but I thought, the first half when both teams played with 11 men, there was nothing good, certainly not great about Liverpool, certainly not Spurs. That's for sure. We'll get to them later. So there's still worries. Someone somewhere out there, Alexis, has unplugged the Liverpool from the energy source, right? I mean, they remind me a little bit of Manchester City of last season, where there's quality and the undeniable quality with Liverpool, but that they're not firing on all cylinders.
Well, of course, we want to pick out a number of moments I think that you could say became, game-changing or swaying moments. And one came super early on that, as you were saying, Janusz, it seemed to have just given all the advantage to Liverpool in this one, and that was that Xavi Simons challenge on his Netherlands captain, Virgil van Dijk there. I know there was some discussion as to whether it really did warrant a red card or not. Where did you stand in it? What did you think of it? And of course, afterwards, how Spurs managed the game.
Well, look, I mean, these days that's a red card, right? I mean, was it absolutely reckless and strong? No, it wasn't. In my book, and I would apply this to everybody, right? It was one of those soft red cards, very soft. I mean, it wasn't intentional, though you don't look at it. I still think he was trying to get around somehow. It was silly for sure, but remembering that Howard Webb wants these to be red cards. Remember, was a couple of seasons ago, I think Wilfred Ndidi on Cole Palmer, and I remember Howard Webb not being happy that the red card wasn't given in that game. I think he directed the referees to do that for these sort of tackles. So you can understand that. He was nowhere near the ball, right? Studs in the back of the leg, nowhere near the ball. So I get that because I'm used to it. Was it absolutely reckless with force? Of course it wasn't. If that yellow card stood, I would have been okay with it. But I know laws of the game. I know how it's interpreted. So, yeah, it was silly on his part. No questions about it. In that situation, in that part of the field, he wasn't going to win that ball away from Van Dijk anyway. So, yeah, I get the red card. Re-refereed.
All right. Well, less than 20 minutes later, that's when Liverpool got their breakthrough through Alexander Isak. And then immediately, Janusz, after he scored the goal, he went down, clutching his knee. He was in visible pain, had to be taken off after that. If you're Liverpool, of course, we're still waiting for them to fully medically assess what this could be and what this could mean for Liverpool. But just looking at this, if you're Arne Slot and the way things have been going for Liverpool, and of course, this is your big money signing, how worried are you with what you saw?
Well, you worried, I don't know as much as he does. He's probably just finding out what's happening. Remember, Isak just before that was on the ground as well, that knee area. That, the other one may have been an ankle, or that could have been that knee as well. So yeah, you worried. You spend a lot of money on Ekitike and Isak. Ekitike is getting going, right? That's 3 goals in 2 games for him. Isak is such an important player. We all knew his record against Spurs. I hope I'm right here. 6 goals in 5 games against Spurs when he was at Newcastle. And first and foremost, when you want to get your team going, and a striker that costs you more than any player in the history of football, he scores the first goal, you say to yourself, okay, another small step for us to get back. So yes, of course, I'd be really worried.
What did you make of how Spurs then approached the game? Because I know there were some questions around Thomas Frank's tactics as well. Just I think overall so far with his tenure at Spurs, just trying to figure out what this Thomas Frank Spurs is going to be.
Yeah, that was shocking, really, because I mean Liverpool weren't doing anything special, that's for sure, and I think for the next 10, 15 minutes, I mean, it didn't look like Spurs even wanted to do it. It almost looked to me like, because their poor record at home, poor record in general, when you look where they are in the table, right? But especially at home, right? The pressure was to finally attack. I listened to Thomas Frank before. Yes, that energy home. We need to get that going. Attack, attack, attack. Energy, energy. There was zero energy, right? It's almost as if, they were thinking for a while, like, yeah, we have an excuse, 10 men, we are okay to defend, right? So yeah, the answer was that. But, the more I think about it, if you look at Spurs, I mean, how are they going to do it? I look at their midfield and they have nothing there to create. I mean, absolutely nothing. If I look at Archie Gray, and he's young, so give him time, but, Archie Gray, Berfal, another young player, Bentancur, Paulinho, Bissouma, who is in there. I'm just talking about center of the midfield, Sarr. These guys are workers. There's not one player that can get you going in there. Okay, James Maddison is injured. He's been injured for a long time. He may be injured, even longer. But there's still question marks. So when I look at this team as a whole, I'm thinking that, yes, we can talk here about Thomas Frank and the difference between coaching Brentford and going to Spurs, where expectations are so high with very little result, right? So I get that. It's a different mindset, different way of coaching. I mean, he's being asked to attack, where he didn't have to do that, right? He just defended well and countered with Brentford. So, but I worry about Spurs because there's nothing there. Not to mention, of course, that very, very late another red card for Romero. I don't know how many he's got already in yellow cards. He clearly, to me, should be stripped of the captaincy. First of all, because of his reactions, what he does with the yellow cards and red cards, and second of all, he's been poor. He's mistake prone. We saw that on the first goal, but there's probably 20 examples of where he's involved directly or indirectly in goals conceded. So to me, that this would be a last straw. To get that, for talking in the end where your team is pushing, you're getting a red card. Not a captain for me.
It's interesting to hear you speak about Spurs, as you said, because it's not something that it's nothing new. We have said this before. Again, I'm just kind of wondering where Spurs go from here. And as you were saying, it leaves you almost speechless to not see the direction. Who do you put this down to then? Is it a Thomas Frank thing, or is it just that they don't currently have the players right now to, I suppose, build on what he feels his plan should be for this team?
Well, he's got to take responsibility for it, for sure. He knew what he was getting into, right? He knew that he was going to be asked to do different things, for sure. He knew he was coming to a much bigger club. I don't blame him. I think he's earned that at Brentford, but sometimes that transition to a big club is what it is. There's been a lot of changes. It's not an easy club. You look at the, at this stage of the season, he's behind Ange Postecoglou in just about, I think, every statistic possible. And we had an issue with Ange Postecoglou. So it is down to him. It's down to him to get the best out of his players. And I look at, you name me a player that's gotten better recently. I just don't want to put it on him, but, Kudus, shadow of a player, right? That we've seen in the past. And We can go on and on. Richarlison is the one that's scoring. He didn't start. I don't know if it was the embarrassing loss to Forest, but I mean, he's been scoring, so I would have put him there. Kolo Muani had two unbelievable chances today. The header in the first half, he's got to put away. He's bounced around a little bit, right? Juventus, actually, he wasn't bad there. He got a number of goals in I think 8 goals in 16 appearances. It's not bad, but I mean, obviously, I don't know if he's recovered from that World Cup final in Qatar yet. But yeah, I mean, there's not much to talk about other than you hope, because they are missing Kulusevski, because he's the closest it comes to giving you consistent performances, actually some creativity, even though he's not a central player, but he's a bit of a, I don't want to call him a playmaker in the wide areas, but he's got something that this team is missing. And, if James Maddison plays at his best after such short, long absence, maybe. But boy, oh boy, oh boy, I don't see much in the Spurs team at all.
Well, alternatively, it was interesting to hear you say as well at the beginning that this Liverpool team just looks like someone unplugged them from that source, from that energy. And even though they won and I suppose had a good amount of control in this game, Janusz, I mean, the discipline at the back or lack thereof, or their defending once again, I think was on show. What did you make of it? And was that the real reason we saw Spurs able to come back in those last 10, 15 minutes?
This team is completely different. That's the problem. And it's not different in a good way. And I've said this before, but today was a good example, even though I'm going to contradict myself a little bit because, 2 center strikers scored. But before that, I mean, you have 2 great center strike players, in Isak and Ekitike, and you have no service whatsoever. None. And I don't see how that changes, because you can, look, we've talked about Trent and Robo at their best. You saw what kind of machine it was, right, in those wide areas. In terms of service from everywhere, early service out of the back from Trent, Robo constantly, getting to the byline, getting great assists, right? I mean, I look at Kerkesh today, and if you just paid attention to his cutbacks, there's no address on any of them. It's just putting the ball anywhere in front without looking. I don't think that Kerkesh has had one good game this entire season. Not one, right? Again, transition from a small club to big, I don't care, but there's nothing there. Connor Bradley, yeah, you can say he's a better defender than Trent Alexander-Arnold, but he's not at the level of Liverpool. Not if Liverpool, in our minds, is to be challenging for the Premier League title or Champions League. I mean, he's a good player, but again, in terms of that service, you're just not going to get that. And, these positions need something special, because you have Ekitike and Isak, right? So there's no service in wide areas. Change of system, obviously the width isn't there because Szoboszlai was coming inside, and so is Wirtz. So it's a must that the wide players have to give you something special consistently every game. And these guys don't, and I don't think they will. So that's an area, of worry. Obviously, Frimpong, long injury, came in. He did deliver a cross. There was a big deflection on that as well, by the way. But okay, he's a player that historically, when Alexis, you and I, we commentated him and watched him at Leverkusen. He's a player that can beat you one-on-one, can get to the byline, can deliver that cross, deflected or not. So perhaps if he stays healthy and he gets used to the system and playing in the Premier League, perhaps that's something that's going to allow Liverpool to function better. Other than that, is just, look, the quality is there. Maybe this is the time, because as we've mentioned, they're not losing, they're getting back, they're in a good position. Maybe the momentum will come back, but I still think that, the key players that are there, have been there, have won it, need to get back to their level. And I'm talking about McAllister, because that's not the level of before, even though we all remember his preseason was very much interrupted with an injury at the end of the seasons. And even Gravenberch, that's not the same player. So the engine of Liverpool is not there yet. The wide area is nowhere near to be what it needs to be. Good news is that Ekitike is starting to play. Isak scored. I hope he stays healthy. Defensively, I wrote down that this was going to be a 3rd clean sheet, but unfortunately it wasn't, right? Van Dijk whiffed on that ball, which is a bit of a worry. Last season, he would have cleared that ball, wouldn't he? Somehow.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, the players that we saw from last season are just not quite the same this season in just a matter of months, which is pretty interesting. But one of the new players, of course, that we come in, and it feels like every time Liverpool play, we do talk about him because he did come with so much promise, as we know. Florian Wirtz, what did you make of him today?
Yeah, I continue to like what he does. I continue to defend him. I continue to think he's an excellent player, and in a properly functioning Liverpool team with energy, pressing, counter-pressing, possession of the ball, he's going to be a fantastic player. Again, he was very good in between the lines. He knows how to get Liverpool out of pressure. Obviously, a little pass and vision for the Isak goal. I think we've seen that. We haven't seen it consistently just yet. I think it's taken him a while, as everybody says, to either learn the system or get up to speed with the Premier League. But I think he's doing okay. I'm going to defend him until the end because I think he's an extremely, extremely talented player.
And I suppose just a final note on Spurs before we start to wrap things up here. But I know we were talking about this off camera, Janusz, and I did say if it's one positive, I suppose Thomas Frank can take from it, because we talk about this lack of urgency and fight that we don't see from Spurs. I suppose we did see it in the last 10, 15 minutes, as you said, whether it was Liverpool that helped them coming back in, whether they just found something in it as well. Mikel Arteta would say it shows character, something to build on. Is there anything Thomas Frank can take from what we saw in the final minutes from Spurs?
I wouldn't do that. That's a way out for the players. If you're winning and have a one-bet game, nothing throughout the game, in the last 5-10 minutes you show that character, then you say, okay, yeah, sometimes day off, you've been doing great, at least you show the character. But that's not enough, because it's going to give the players an out, and that's not what you want, because it wasn't good enough for such a long time, with the red cards and especially the second one as well. So as I've said, that was more of a function of Liverpool. That mentality, monsters that I was talking about, right? When things don't go well, they kind of, oh, here we go again type of thing, which is, I'm not used to watching Liverpool Football Club. I think it was more of that than anything else, to be quite honest. And I would not give players an out to say, oh, the last 5-10 minutes, fair play to you guys. Fair play for what? The first half, Spurs didn't exist. Nothing other than one chance. Here they are at home against Liverpool. That's been better. But in this first half, they showed nothing as well, right? So, if you Spurs and you have Liverpool, remember last year it was like 6-3 or something like that, right? It's normally even Spurs at their best, that's a difficult game. After first half, at halftime, if I'm Thomas Frank, I'd be saying, hey, there's nothing here, nothing to worry, nothing to fear. That's what I would be saying. And so they haven't done it. So, the last 5-10 minutes, I wouldn't praise them for that.
All right. Well, as we say, it was the final match day before Christmas. I'm sure everyone will have a lot to think about while they're having their Christmas dinner, especially after we look at the table. Now, it's just interesting because, of course, for all the faults that we have pointed out about Liverpool, and we have said that they're not perfect yet, look at them in the table now, level on points with Chelsea. Of course, Chelsea boasting a much better goal difference, and that's what keeps Chelsea in the top four. Chelsea having to claw their way back at St. James's Park today to force a draw with Newcastle. But Liverpool, Janusz, are they turning a bit of a corner as we turn to welcome in a new year?
Look, this win, with all the faults, because we spoke about Liverpool in general, where are they? It's much better. But this is not the game where, they're going to say, oh, my goodness, what a game, right? But yes, it's a fifth place. Now, Liverpool have 2 home games against Wolves and Leeds. Those are 2 must wins, a very much winnable game. They gave away the Leeds result, which kind of, kept this, that snowball losing or tying winning games, right? Remember, leading by 2 goals, 3-3 ended up, but certainly at Anfield, I think against hapless Wolves and Leeds, they should win. So if they do get the 6 points, it's going to be interesting, right? Then it's Fulham away. Again, if the winning continues, then that's a winnable game. And then, by the way, I think after that, it's Arsenal away. So you can get yourself back in that. It's way too early to say that Liverpool may have some sort of a chance, because we see what Manchester City are doing as well. But I would look at it, on a positive note, because they've stopped the bleeding. Winning is winning. They'll take that on board for sure. And I think that with the next two games, we may start talking about Liverpool again. They're going to be getting closer and closer to the top three. Mm-hmm. Are they good enough at the moment to win it? No, but it's still plenty of season left, and you can see that Arsenal may be or should be getting a little bit nervous. As good as Arsenal has been, look who's at the top of the table. And Arsenal have been excellent this season. Just goes to show it's a Premier League.
It's the Premier League indeed. And we hear it time and time again that it is easier to chase than it is to lead. And I'm sure Arsenal know that very, very well. Well, speaking of the Gunners, they're about to play against Everton. And then Janusz mentioned Leeds. They're in action against Crystal Palace later on in the Premier League. So the action still continues. The boys on ESPN FC will be talking about those games, I'm sure, later on. But as for me and Janusz right now, it's bye for now.